The night shift at the lunar listening station was usually quiet. Jake Morrison sat at his console, watching the endless stream of data from deep space. For 5 years, he had been monitoring signals from beyond the solar system. For 5 years, he had found nothing but empty noise. Tonight was different. Amy Chen leaned forward in her chair, her eyes fixed on her screen. She was the communications officer, and something had caught her attention. The signal was weak, barely stronger than background radiation, but it had a pattern. It repeated every 47 seconds. "Commander Morrison, you need to see this," she said. Jake rolled his chair over to her station. The pattern was clear once you knew where to look. This was not natural. This was artificial. Someone somewhere was sending a message across the stars. Where is it coming from? Jake asked. Amy checked her readings twice before answering. Approximately 40 light-years away. "The signal is old, sir. It was sent decades ago." Jake felt his heart race. Humanity had been alone in the universe for its entire history. Every telescope had found empty worlds. Every probe had discovered dead rocks. And now finally proof that Earth was not alone. "Get me the president," Jake said. "And wake up everyone. We have work to do." The signal took 3 weeks to decode. Dr. Peter Grant led the team of scientists who worked day and night to crack the message. Peter was an expert in languages, but this was unlike anything he had ever studied. The syntax was alien, the grammar incomprehensible at first. Slowly, piece by piece, the message revealed itself. It was a distress call. The aliens called themselves the Varani. They were a peaceful species. Explorers and scientists who had built a civilization across 50 worlds. For 200 years, they had been hunted by another species called the Kresh. The Kresh were warriors, conquerors who destroyed everything in their path. The Varani had lost 30 colony worlds. Billions of their people were dead. Their homeworld was under siege, and they had no hope of survival. The distress call was their final message, sent to anyone who might be listening. They did not expect an answer. They simply wanted someone to know they had existed. President Laura Mitchell sat in the Situation Room surrounded by advisors and military commanders. The decoded message played on the main screen. When it ended, the room was silent. "How far away are they?" Laura asked. Admiral Kyle Henderson stood up. He was the commander of Earth's war fleet, a collection of 23 warships built to protect human colonies in the solar system. 40 light-years, Madam President. With our quantum jump drives, we could reach them in 6 months. 6 months there, 6 months back, said Senator Greg Palmer. A year away from Earth, and for what? To fight a war for aliens we've never met? We should focus on defending ourselves. Defending ourselves from what? Laura asked. We've been alone for our entire history. Now we know there are others out there. If we ignore this, what does that say about us? Jake Morrison had been invited to the meeting as the man who discovered the signal. He raised his hand to speak. Madam President, the Varani sent tactical data about the Kresh. They're dangerous. They've never been defeated. But they've also never fought a species like us. What do you mean? Laura asked. The Kresh have conquered peaceful civilizations, species that evolved without war. Earth is different. We've spent 10,000 years fighting ourselves. We know war in ways these aliens can't imagine. If anyone can stop the Kresh, it's us. Admiral Henderson nodded. The young commander is right. I've studied the data. The Kresh rely on overwhelming numbers. They regenerate damage quickly, but they've never needed tactics because they've never faced real resistance. We can beat them. The debate lasted for hours. Some argued that Earth should stay hidden, that revealing humanity's existence was too dangerous. Others said that letting an entire civilization die when Earth could help was unthinkable. Finally, Laura called for a vote. It was close, but the decision was made. Earth would answer the distress call. The fleet assembled in high orbit above Earth. 23 warships, every operational military vessel humanity possessed. The flagship was the EWS Defender, a massive battle carrier that served as Admiral Henderson's command ship. Around it gathered cruisers, destroyers, and support vessels. Captain Lisa Morgan stood on the bridge of her ship, the heavy cruiser EWS Vengeance. Her crew of 300 was ready. They had trained for years, running combat simulations and practicing tactics. But simulations were not real. None of them had ever fired a weapon in anger. All systems are green, Captain, said Lieutenant Paul Stevens from the weapons station. We're ready to go. Lisa looked out at the fleet. These ships represented humanity's best hope. If they failed, Earth might never get a second chance. But if they succeeded, humanity would take its place among the stars. On the Defender, Lieutenant Commander Ryan Cooper briefed the fighter pilots. 60 small craft would accompany the fleet, ready to engage enemy fighters. The pilots were young, some barely 20 years old. Ryan could see the fear in their eyes. "Listen up," Ryan said. "We don't know exactly what we're flying into, but we know the Varani need help and we know the Kresh are killers. You've all trained for this. Trust your skills, trust your wingmates, and remember why we're going. We're not doing this for glory. We're doing this because it's right." The pilots nodded. Ensign Claire Bennett caught Ryan's eye and gave him a small smile. She was one of his best pilots, and he was glad she would be out there with them. Down in the medical bay, Dr. Helen Cross checked her supplies one last time. She had brought enough equipment to treat hundreds of casualties. She hoped she wouldn't need it all, but hope was not a strategy. She would be ready for whatever came. Colonel Frank Hayes walked through the combat deck where his Marines trained. 10,000 soldiers in powered armor, equipped with the best weapons Earth could build. Frank knew that if the fighting came down to Marines boarding enemy ships, the war had already gone badly. But Marines prepared for everything. As the final preparations continued, Jake Morrison sent one last message to the Varani. He didn't know if they would receive it, or if they were even still alive. But he had to try. "This is Commander Jake Morrison of Earth. We received your distress call. We are coming to help. Hold on." 3 days later, a response came back. It had taken years to reach Earth, sent long before the fleet was assembled. The message was simple. "We cannot believe you are coming. There is still time to turn back. The Kresh show no mercy. May fortune favor the brave." Admiral Henderson read the message to the entire fleet. Then he gave the order to depart. The fleet entered quantum jump space, folding reality around itself. The journey would take 6 months. 6 months of travel through a dimension that human minds couldn't quite comprehend. The ships moved as ghosts through the void, crossing light years every day. The crew settled into routines. Training exercises continued. Maintenance teams kept the ships running. People made friends, fell in love, wrote letters home that wouldn't arrive for a year. Commander Sarah Blake, the fleet's intelligence officer, studied every piece of data about the Kresh. The more she learned, the more worried she became. The Kresh were biological horrors evolved for war. Their ships were grown, not built, living creatures that could heal damage. Their weapons were alive, hunting targets with terrible intelligence. But Sarah also saw weaknesses. The Kresh had never needed strategy. They won through pure force. Against a clever opponent, that could be a fatal flaw. 3 months into the journey, sensors detected a Kresh probe. It was an automated scout searching for new prey. It detected the Earth fleet and transmitted a signal before the Vengeance destroyed it. Somewhere in the darkness, the Kresh received that signal. They knew something was coming. They began to prepare. When the fleet finally dropped out of quantum space at the edge of the Varani system, what they saw made Admiral Henderson's blood run cold. The system was burning. 3 planets showed signs of orbital bombardment. Debris fields marked where space stations had been destroyed, and around the Varani homeworld, 200 Kresh warships waited. They had been hunting the Varani for centuries. Now they moved in for the kill. Admiral Henderson took a deep breath. This was it. This was the moment that would define humanity's future among the stars. "All ships," he said calmly. "Weapons free. Show them what Earth is made of." The first shots of humanity's first interstellar war lit up the darkness. The Defender's main guns fired first. Beams of concentrated energy crossed the void in seconds, striking 3 Kresh warships. The alien vessels screamed across all communication frequencies, their organic hulls burning. The Kresh had never felt pain like this before. 200 Kresh warships turned away from the dying Varani fleet. They moved as one massive organism, redirecting toward these new enemies. Thousands of smaller fighters swarmed forward, ready to tear the Earth ships apart. Admiral Henderson watched them come.
Split formation.
Execute pattern Delta. The Earth fleet separated into 3 groups. The Defender and the heavy cruisers formed the center, their massive guns firing continuously. Destroyers spread to the sides, creating overlapping fields of fire. The support ships pulled back, their defense systems active. Captain Lisa Morgan commanded the right flank aboard the Vengeance. Her weapons officer, Paul Stevens, coordinated the firing patterns with cold precision. Each shot was calculated for maximum damage. The crashed ships could heal themselves, but not faster than the Vengeance could destroy them. "Target the damaged sections," Lisa ordered. "Don't give them time to regenerate." The Vengeance and 2 destroyers focused their fire on a single Kresh warship. The alien vessel tried to heal, its organic hull knitting back together, but the Earth ships poured more energy into it than it could handle. The Kresh ship convulsed and exploded, scattering biological matter across space. It was the first time a Kresh capital ship had died in 200 years. The other Kresh ships hesitated. Confusion rippled through their collective mind. How had these unknown aliens destroyed one of their warships so easily? The Kresh had conquered dozens of civilizations. They had never known defeat. But Admiral Henderson gave them no time to think. "All ships advance. Keep firing." The Earth fleet pushed forward like a spear. 20 more Kresh ships died in the next hour, their hulls torn apart by weapons they couldn't defend against. The Kresh had evolved to fight peaceful species. They had never faced an enemy that understood war the way humans did, but the Kresh learned quickly. They began to swarm individual Earthships, trying to overwhelm them with numbers. Hundreds of Kresh fighters surrounded the destroyer EWS Valiant, attacking from all sides. The Valiant's shields held for 3 minutes, then collapsed. Bioweapons burned through the armor. The ship's reactor went critical. The Valiant exploded, taking its entire crew of 312 people with it. 40 Kresh fighters died in the blast, but the Kresh had thousands more. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Cooper led his fighter wing into the chaos. 60 Earth fighters, small and fast, flew between the massive capital ships. The Kresh fighters were biological nightmares, all claws and teeth and living weapons. They hunted with animal instinct. But Ryan and his pilots had something the Kresh didn't have. They had training, discipline, and 5,000 years of aerial combat evolution behind them. "Wall formation," Ryan ordered over the radio. "Now!" The Earth fighters spread into a line, their weapons overlapping. When the Kresh fighters dove toward them, they flew straight into a curtain of plasma fire and missiles. Dozens of Kresh craft died instantly. The survivors broke off, confused by this tactic. Ensign Claire Bennett flew through the battle like a dancer. Her fighter twisted and turned, avoiding Kresh weapons by inches. She destroyed 8 enemy craft in 4 minutes, her instincts guiding her hands. She thought about the future she wanted, the life she hoped to have after this war ended. The fighter wings lost 18 pilots in the first 2 hours. But they destroyed hundreds of Kresh craft. The aliens had never encountered such small vessels that fought with such fury. 4 hours into the battle, Commander Sarah Blake identified the key target. The Kresh command ship sat at the center of their formation, 3 times larger than the Defender. It coordinated all the other ships, linking them into a single fighting force. Destroy it and the Kresh would lose their coordination. "Admiral, I've found their weak point," Sarah reported. "The command ship. If we can take it out, they'll fall apart." Admiral Henderson studied the tactical display. The command ship was protected by dozens of other vessels. Reaching it would cost lives, but it might end the battle. "All ships form up on the Defender," he ordered. "We're going straight through them." The Earth fleet gathered into a spear formation. The Defender led the way, its heavy armor absorbing terrible damage. Behind it, the other ships followed in a tight line. They drove through the Kresh fleet like a blade, destroying everything in their path. The Kresh threw everything they had at the advancing formation. The cruiser EWS Thunderhead took a direct hit that crippled its engines. Dead in space, the crew kept fighting until Kresh boarders broke through the hull. 600 more people died, but the fleet reached the command ship. Admiral Henderson opened a channel to every ship in the fleet. "All vessels, fire everything you have now, every gun on every ship fired at once. Missiles, energy beams, plasma torpedoes, kinetic rounds." The Kresh command ship tried to heal, its organic systems working desperately to repair the damage. It wasn't enough. The command ship took 90 seconds to die. When it exploded, the blast was so bright it could be seen from the planet's surface below. The remaining Kresh ships stopped moving. Their coordination was gone. For the first time in their species' history, they felt fear. 73 Kresh ships turned and fled into deep space. The rest stayed to fight and were destroyed. The battle lasted 8 hours total. When it ended, the Kresh fleet was gone. The Earth fleet had lost 4 ships and 38 fighters. 3,217 people would never go home. Admiral Henderson ordered defensive positions around the Varani homeworld. Damage control teams worked to repair the battered ships. Dr. Helen Cross and her medical staff treated hundreds of wounded. The morgues filled with the dead, heroes who had crossed light years to save people they had never met. On the planet's surface, the Varani emerged from their shelters. They had been hiding underground for weeks, waiting for death. Instead, they had witnessed something impossible. A fleet from an unknown world had arrived and defeated the Kresh, the unstoppable enemy that had hunted them for 2 centuries. Ambassador Talon, leader of the Varani Collective, requested communication with the Earth fleet. He was old, his features marked by grief and loss. When his face appeared on the Defender's main screen, tears ran down his face. "We sent our distress call into the void, expecting only silence," Talon said, his voice breaking. "We have been alone for so long. We forgot that the universe might hold kindness. You crossed the stars for people you do not know. You fought for us. You bled for us. How can we ever repay this debt?" Admiral Henderson was quiet for a moment. He thought about the 3,000 people who had died, about the families on Earth who would receive terrible news. He thought about why humanity had come here in the first place. "We didn't come for payment," Henderson said. "We came because it was right. Because when someone cries for help, you answer. That's what it means to be human." Ambassador Talon wept openly. Across the Varani homeworld, billions of people did the same. They had been saved by strangers who asked for nothing in return. The Earth fleet remained in the Varani system for 2 months. Engineers from both species worked together, sharing knowledge and technology. The Varani offered their advanced medical science and their databases of galactic knowledge. Earth shared tactical information and defensive strategies. Jake Morrison, who had first detected the distress call 6 months ago, met with Varani scientists. They exchanged stories about their worlds and their peoples. Friendships formed across the species barrier. Communication was difficult at first, but laughter needed no translation. Lieutenant Nick Foster and Ensign Claire Bennett got married on the observation deck of the Defender. Admiral Henderson performed the ceremony himself. Half the fleet attended via video link. The Varani sent gifts, beautiful crystalline sculptures that sang with light. Before the fleet departed for Earth, Ambassador Talon made an announcement. The Varani had sent a message across their communication network, a network that connected dozens of alien species across hundreds of light years. The message told the story of Earth and humanity's courage, of the fleet that had answered their desperate call. Within weeks, responses began arriving. Other species wanted to know more about these humans. Some were threatened by the Kresh and wanted help. Others were simply curious about this new species that fought for justice. Admiral Henderson realized what had happened. Earth had announced itself to the galaxy not with peaceful exploration, but by winning a war for strangers. Humanity's reputation was established. They were the species that answered the call. Commander Sarah Blake warned that this would bring attention and not all of it would be friendly. The surviving Kresh would remember. Other species might see humanity as a threat. Earth needed to prepare for whatever came next, but for now there was victory. The Varani lived. The Kresh knew fear, and humanity had taken its first steps into a larger universe. The journey home took another 6 months. The fleet traveled through quantum space carrying the wounded, the dead, and the knowledge of what they had accomplished. Messages were sent ahead to Earth, telling the story of the battle. When the fleet dropped out of quantum space near Earth,